Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I wanted to talk more about the Star Wars Battlefront 2 beta, expand some of my thoughts about the game, talk about some of the hot topic issues going on right now, like whether or not the game is going to have a sort of pay-to-win loot crate system. We can talk about that a bit more, talk about some of the balance, abilities, and game modes, and what I think the final product of this game is going to be like. I gotta say, now that I've sunk even more hours into it, I am getting more and more excited for the final product. And it's true, I really don't think EA has necessarily put their best foot forward with some of the map selections here, and I'm definitely getting a hint from some people who have played more of the game than I have that there is definitely better maps and game modes out there, and that the beta probably isn't the best example of what some of the full game is going to offer. Now, why don't we start off with the hot button issue that I think most people are talking about right now, and that's whether or not Star Wars Battlefront 2 is going to be a pay-to-win game. With a game right now that has so much promise, so much content, amazing graphics, why would DICE risk putting in such a controversial, potentially pay-to-win system into their game right now? And is it actually a pay-to-win system, or are people just overreacting? Well, let's look at some of the basics here. We know that players are going to be able to buy loot crates with actual out-of-game currency, so you can put in your credit card and get more loot crates at a faster rate than if you just played the game, in which you can then purchase loot crates with just in-game currency. So there's two currency values in there. You can unlock more stuff if you're willing to pay more money. So there is a pay system in there, but are the upgrades you get from paying more money really going to give you a huge advantage? In games like Battlefield, you can pay some money to get some weapons unlocked faster, but DICE didn't actually release some of these shortcuts until the weapons had been out for a while. So it was sort of a way for players getting into the game late not to have to go through all the standard unlock stuff that players who had already sunk hundreds of hours into the game. And that sort of allowed some of the newer players to come into the game and get some unlocks to compete with some of the veterans in the game, rather than having to sink in a good 50 to 100 hours of doing unlock assignments just to get the weapons that everybody else was using. Newer players could then catch up. This didn't give new players an advantage, nor did it necessarily make them better at the game or give them better weapons. It just gave them more variety. Many of the base guns in Battlefield were plenty good to take on the top tier players, so getting more weapons unlocked at a quicker rate wasn't necessarily a huge advantage either. In Star Wars Battlefront, the game is built around these loot crates and star cards that you can get to upgrade your characters and starfighters. Now, these upgrades are not what I would call side grades. Some other games put in quote-unquote side grades, which basically give you an upgrade in one area but a downgrade in another area. This allows you to sort of specify or customize your character to play in a very specific way, but it doesn't allow you to just become more powerful all around. That is not the case in Star Wars Battlefront 2. Many of the star cards are just straight upgrades to your pre-existing abilities. For example, in Starfighter Assault, the bomber can get an armor upgrade, which just increases your overall health points. By how much, you might be wondering? Well, if you upgrade it all the way, which is purely based on unlocks from loot crates or crafting materials, which you also get from loot crates, you can upgrade your health so that it has a whopping 40% health bonus. If you think this doesn't make a difference in multiplayer, you are dead wrong. Having 40% more health in a Starfighter Assault game is going to allow you to do significantly better. It's going to allow you to defeat opponents on your same skill level pretty much every single time, and it'll probably let you defeat better players than yourself because you'll have upgraded hit points. Not just can you upgrade hit points, but you can upgrade the damage that your lock-on missiles do, the rate at which they lock on, the damage that your laser cannons do, the rate at which they fire, the cooldown rate. All of this can be upgraded by a very significant margin. Again, other games might give players an advantage of 5 to maybe 10% if you have something upgraded all the way to the max. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is giving players bonuses from 40% to 30%. I mean, if you can gain 40% extra armor and 30% extra damage, you're coming into a game where you could potentially defeat everybody who doesn't have those upgrades. And that is a bit of an issue. I think DICE might have gone a bit too far. Are these percentages set in stone, or are they just DICE playing around with some beta values? Will these values be nerfed by the time the final game comes out? These are questions that we don't have answered yet, but I think it's very possible that DICE will see a lot of the criticism from the community right now and the fear from the community about this being a pay-to-win game, and potentially nerf some of these upgrades by launch so that it doesn't seem like paying players are getting that big of an advantage. One obvious flaw in the system is that when you rank up your star cards from rank 1 through rank 4, the bonuses you get from them actually increase by more the higher the level is. Most other games do this in reverse. For example, the armor upgrade that you get for the bomber starts off at 5%, then it goes to 10%, then 20%, and then 40% at rank 4. What other games do, and usually with good reason, is they upgrade your level 1 upgrade with a 20% bonus and then say a 10% bonus for level 2, maybe a 5% bonus for level 3, and maybe even a very small bonus for level 4. This means that most players can get the highest bonus right at the start. So if I get the cool star card that upgrades my armor, I'm going to get that nice 20% bonus right at the start. And if I keep playing, I'll get another 10%. But rather than having to get the highest level star card, which I could just pay for, which gives me the huge bonus at the very end, I get most of it right off the bat. And then I can kind of work for the last few percentages if I really want to. But it means that if somebody pays some money to get the last upgrade, they're only going to get a few more percentage points than me, rather than getting a huge whopping massive upgrade over me. So DICE did this one backwards, and it really is a flawed system. They need to at least reverse the upgrade system so that your bonuses are getting smaller the higher level you get to. Now, many other games have their own loot crate systems. Overwatch, Counter-Strike Go, Rainbow Six Siege, they all have loot crates that you can use actual money to buy and get new unlocks for your character. The difference being that these games have their loot crates only allow you to get cosmetic upgrades. And so if you invest a lot of time in that game, there's a good reason to want to make your character look a little bit different, stand out from the crowd, show off maybe your dedication to the game. I totally understand this, and I can totally support a loot crate system for cosmetic only items. That way, if you're not sure if you're really into the game that much and you're just playing it purely for the gameplay and you have no interest in cosmetics, then you don't have to spend any money on it. If you are interested in cosmetics, then go at it. It's just a way for developers to earn a bit more money on their game and not really detract from the gameplay or create a pay-to-win system. And I don't know why DICE is risking the reputation of this game, which seems to have so much promise behind it, by implementing a potential pay-to-win system. There's no doubt about it. It can easily be argued that this game is pay-to-win. Whether or not it's significantly pay-to-win or only a little bit pay-to-win, the system is in place to make that argument, and DICE could have easily avoided this by making their loot crate system cosmetic only. And to say the least, it's ruffled quite a few feathers in the gaming community. So we'll have to see how this plays out. We'll have to see if there's any significant changes to the loot crate system when Battlefront actually launches. Now, aside from EA opening themselves up to this pay-to-win argument, I've really enjoyed a lot of the rest of Star Wars Battlefront 2. I said in my first video that I was a bit let down with the shooter mechanics and the gunplay aspect of it, and technically I still am. It's something that I was hoping would be a little bit more in-depth, but I can sort of see now that I've sunk more hours into it that the design of the game is really designed around it as an ability shooter, which can be fun. Once you start to learn the abilities and upgrade your abilities and find fun combos, you can use those abilities together in combination to beat your opponents. It's not quite as rewarding or engaging to me as just beating people by having a pure accuracy advantage, but there's still fun aspects to dominating somebody and an ability aspect as well. I mean, there's a lot of other games out there like League of Legends that are all about timing your abilities at the right time and using that in a strategic way to get an advantage of your opponent, and I think Battlefront 2 feeds off of some of the same elements. I do, however, worry that this might lead to some very uninteresting meta down the road. The game is setting itself up to have a lot of different combinations that you can put together, but ultimately people are going to figure out what some of the best combos are, and then I think we're going to start seeing a lot less variety once the game's a month or two old. Everybody's going to be using one or two different types of abilities, much like we saw in Star Wars Battlefront from 2015. This, of course, can be combated by frequent updates and balance changes to try and nerf some abilities and boost other abilities to keep the meta changing and more interesting. DICE has never really shown great fortitude for quick updates and balance changes regarding this, especially since we're still waiting on some very significant Battlefield 1 fixes that are coming out a year after launch. But we'll really have to wait and see how Star Wars Battlefront 2 handles it. With the massive scope of this game and knowing that it's going to include all eras of Star Wars, I can't wait to see how it incorporates some of the new film stuff, especially with the new Last Jedi trailer that just dropped. There seems to be a lot of really awesome looking battle scenarios, and I think probably strategically Star Wars Battlefront 2 is gonna not only include some of that stuff in their upcoming game, but is probably reserved some of that content to show a little bit later. But it all looks really exciting, and the massive amount of content that's shipping with this game I think is still going to be one of the best things about it. So they're definitely fixing a lot of the criticisms of the first game, and unfortunately introducing a few more things that are really setting themselves up for more criticism down the line. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the launch of Star Wars Battlefront 2. I'm still quite excited about it and am eager to make some more in-depth tutorials and guides for guns and classes in this game. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.